What are the five houses that will dictate whether you're going to have a successful career in this lifetime? Hi, I'm Holly Hall from AskHollyHall.com. There is actually a lot more involved than just that. So let me break it down. And we're only going to talk about the 12 houses. And this is what I use in sidereal astrology. So actually, every single house can determine your success, but you determine what success means for you. And astrologically, I can see that as well. So I have a client who's born September 3rd, 1969. And she was asking me, where is my career success? I've had a career most of my life and I'm quite unhappy with it. She has a ton of planets in the fourth house, which means she really liked her home. She liked her home environment. She liked being a mom. She liked this being stay at home. And now she's an empty nester and she feels that I don't feel fulfilled anymore. So it must be my career because that's what society tells us, right? Well, she's got a major planet, Uranus, going through her fourth house, which means she still would like to be needed. She needs to be needed. That's really what it comes down to. So let's take a look at the five houses. No, let's look at them all. The first house, when it comes to career, means that it feels like that you need to be identified in your career. It's your sense of identity. If you got a lot of planets in that first house, specifically your sun, it becomes uh, who you are. And you want to have recognition in the workplace, and you want to feel that people um, look up to you, admire you. You need something that's adventurous and you don't get bored easily. The second house is about money. How are you valued? And a lot of people will place value on the money that they make and what their paycheck looks like. But really, what it comes down to is a sense of value. But when you have a lot of planets in the second house, you do pretty well financially, depending on whether they're squares or oppositions. But you do focus on your financial abundance. The third house has to do with your education and being transient. You like change. You could be a writer, you could be a teacher in that third house, or you could have anything to do with communication and transportation. You take a look at, I mean, this computer that I'm looking at right now is a source of communication. Transportation could be a mechanic or driving a long haul or even traveling or being a teacher. That's a form of communication too. So the third house is all around constantly working with the mind, learning, facilitating how you use your voice and communication, etc. And the fourth house, that's that stay-at-home mom kind of thing, stay-at-home dad. I gotta have a work-life balance I got a personal balance. I don't just work for the paycheck. You might work for the mortgage though, because the fourth house and your children, because that's the children and the home life. But your personal life is extremely important. And that negates success for you. If I can have a good working life that allows me to have an amazing personal life, that's all I care about. The fifth house, that has to do with having fun and playfulness. And if you're not having fun and having play and being creative in your work environment, it's just not going to jive for you. It's not going to sit well. You'll always feel dissatisfied. And that's the house of real estate as well. So, hey, maybe you'll be in real estate. The sixth house, that has to do with serving. I need to serve people. You might actually, be a server or a cashier, or you might be in the healthcare industry. There's a need to focus on nutrition, coworkers. If you're not happy with your coworkers, you're not happy at all. And that's the success of the sixth house. The seventh house is more of a partnership. I want fairness in the workplace. You might even desire to be partnered up with somebody in that workplace or work in the legal field or places where you see there's injustice or being unfair. I've got another client who is very heavily involved in the union. And that's very much seventh house. The eighth house is around psychology, but other people's money. So even investments, wealth investment, insurance, death, dying, sexuality, psychology. That's all involved in feeling successful when you have planets, a lot of planets in the eighth house. And then the ninth house is further education and traveling. And therefore, you'll continuously want to further your education. And you might even do it through having cultural experiences while you're traveling. It's also around publishing. The third house is around writing. So you could write a book or be a writer or a creative in creative writing. And then the ninth house is around publishing. Will that book get published? Can you get through the publishing process of it? If you've gone to education and you've become a doctor or a hairdresser, you might end up teaching those subjects if you have a lot of planets in the ninth house, especially if they're triggered, through a transit. The 10th house is kind of a self-employment feeling. It feels like I need to be self-employed. I need to work for myself. I need to be the boss of me, or I need to be in an autonomous position where I am more in control of my work environment. And the 11th house is a humanitarian, but you also like working with the general public and working in large organizations where there's people, and in technology as well. The 12th house, that's more institutionalized work, or you want to work on your own, as prisons, hospitals, institutions are also educational systems, etc. And it can also be the intuitive side of working. The healers are all in the 12th house. So there you go, the work environment in all 12 houses. Namaste. Oh, please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. I see so many people are watching my videos, but they're not liking it. They're not subscribing it. If you really want to help me, that's what you could do for me. Thank you. How do you find love, marriage, whether you're going to have children in your birth chart? Let's break it down. First, we're going to talk about love and marriage. Now, remember, I'm Holly from AskHollyHall.com, and I'm a sidereal astrologer, constellational astrology. It is based on where the constellations and the planets are actually right now, and not on Western astrology, because Western astrology is no longer accurate. So, if you're already studying Western astrology or you had that chart done, then this will enhance the chart that you've already received. That's a whole nother story. So, let's take a look at love. There are several factors when it comes to finding love in an astrology chart. The first one is to understand what love is. Okay. It is not about, it's not about a pitter patter in your heart center. Okay. It's not about, oh, I get so excited when I'm around that person. And it's definitely not about chemistry, whether we have chemistry. If we hit it off right away, then it's a thing. If we don't hit it off right away, then bye-bye. If you follow any of those sort of rules that have been Hollywood into us, then you're probably not going to find true love. Sorry. But if you understand the version of unique love that you hold within the essence of who you are, and you find someone who allows you to express that, that means it flows with ease for you to be able to express love. And here's the kicker: learn to advance that state of love that you already understand. Third one, which is the one that's probably more disappointing, is if you have limiting beliefs around love that is holding you back from finding true unconditional love, then you're going to find somebody who's going to squeeze that out of you. That's not easy, nor is it fun. However, the end result is very beneficial. So you want to look at Venus and Mars. Venus is what you love, how you love, and your personal interests. Mars is what action do you take to lure that love towards you? It might be love of a job, love of a person, might be a personal interest, love of buying a real estate, buying a house, love of your children, and it might even be around love with your personal family members, lack of or having to bring more love, maybe from your parents or that sister-in-law that you never really got along with. The reason we stick around those relationships longer is because we do want to find that connection with them. So we take a look at Venus. Now, if you've got an earth sign in Venus, then you're looking at Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Then you're looking for a love, whether it's your job or a personal relationship, of somebody that is grounded. You're grounded. You're solid. You're a caretaker. You're a problem solver. You serve. And you want to be able to not simply care for them, but help them solve their problems, maybe even take control around it. And it's important that they are also grounded, practical, rational, not level-headed, don't have their heads in the clouds, so to speak. But hey, they might have like a Libra, Mercury, right? And that's a whole nother story. That's around communication. And then how do you lure them in? Well, if you're grounded, Earth signs, then you're going to lure them in by showing them how much you can serve them, help them solve their problems, how practical and rational you are and logical and down to earth. And you're not going to jump the gun. You're not going to jump into the relationship. You're going to take it very seriously. I'm going to seriously consider this connection that we have before I jump in. But if you're a fire sign, which is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, well, then what? You're adventurous, you're feisty, you're fun, you're in the moment, spontaneous, you're in a hurry. There's no holding back. You say it as it is, you call it as it is. And therefore, you're looking for someone who can take it, who can fight back if they don't like what you're saying, who is also adventurous, who's spontaneous as well, and doesn't mind doing things at the last minute. They don't mind that you can get fiery and upset in the moment, but that you simmer off eventually. They don't take it personally. They don't try to problem solve it as a grounded earth person might, because you're over it in a heartbeat. You don't stay angry or bitter or hurt for too long. In most cases, okay, it really depends on all the rest of your chart. This is Venus and this is Mars. I'm not talking about sun signs or moon signs, etc. This is so when you have that fiery, how do you want somebody who's got that fiery energy and that's what you're interested in. But what if your Mars is in a fire sign? Then you let them know immediately. You really don't have patience for, let's see if it's going to work out. You want to know right away, is this the one? Is this going to last? Are you interested in what I'm? Are you in a hurry? I'm in a hurry. Are you in a hurry? And sometimes that can be detrimental in a love relationship because you may get the fire in somebody else's chart and they may be impatient with your impatience, right? But hey, you're fun, you're the life of the party, and you make sure that there's playfulness and romance in the relationship. And if there isn't, you get bored easily and you're out of here. Or you might you're as independent as fiery signs are, you might just try to figure out how to have fun on your own. And that can be problematic in the relationship in the long run as well. But if you've got somebody who needs to be boosted up, who needs to get some fire in them, who takes life a little bit too serious, they might appreciate that. And then we got air signs, right? And that is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Well, you're kind of in your head. You're logical, you're rational, not always as flexible. However, you're knowledgeable and you want to have decent conversations with the person that you love. If your Venus is in an air sign, you have to be able to have intellectual conversations about everything and anything spontaneously. You don't always need to be right, but you are curious about what the right answer is. So you want somebody who's not going to take that too personally. In fact, they're kind of curious too. Yeah, look it up, Google it. Let's see who's right, who's wrong. Freedom is extremely important as well. So that freedom to be an individual, to be unique, to be different, and to change on a dime. Because you do get a little bit bored easily as well. Now, you could be easygoing or make it quite difficult to make a decision. And even though you may refer to a conversation with somebody to help create the decision process for you, you really don't want somebody telling you what to do. If you do, then you may become detached or a little bit too complacent. And this can be difficult in the relationship in the long run too, because they don't really know who you are. Because you're not stating your power, you're not telling your truth. And usually what happens is there's a distance or a detachment for a while after arguing about who's right and who's wrong for years. And then there's a tendency to go, bye-bye. And they're like, wait, what? I thought we were fine. No, not really. Okay. So an air sign person is definitely enjoyable to be around if you're ready to sort of philosophize life and have the freedom to express yourself and allow them to express themselves. Now, how do you attract somebody if you've got air in your Mars? You know, your Mars is an air sign, or and even in any of the air houses as well, which we can get into another time. The way that you attract them is by showing them your intelligence, how you communicate, how you're quite eclectic and eccentric around talking about different types of subjects. You may be easygoing, agreeable. You allow them to communicate, you allow them to talk. Okay. Now, depending, Geminis can definitely get to be a bit too jibber jabbery in storytelling and not allow the other person to talk to as much. And that really depends on what else is going on in your chart. If it's negatively afflicted, like it's a square to maybe a Virgo moon, and you're emotionally kind of nervous about meeting that person, you may overshare and over storytell and over talk, but that's a whole nother issue. You want to be playful. You want to be fun as well. Very close to like a fire sign. But what if you're a water sign? Oh, water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. You're emotional. You want an emotional, vulnerable connection with somebody. You want them to share their emotions with you, but not be overly needy, not suffocating. Because what will happen is you will give to them. All their needs will be met emotionally, physically, psychologically. And then you'll start having resentment because your needs aren't being met, because you attracted a needy partner. But you need to be needed, and you love to psychoanalyze, and you will suffer in silence. So you got to be very careful around that. You do like your alone time. You like your quiet. You like your homey, cozy domain. And you invite anyone to come in and share that with you. Quite welcoming that way to a degree. But as long as they allow you to have your alone time whenever you need it, that's extremely important to you. Now, what if your Mars is in a water sign? How do you attract a partner? You tend to their needs. You feel bad for them. You go, oh, that's so sad. Even if they're telling you something logical and practical, like, I lost my job, but what the heck? I didn't like it anyways. And you'd be like, oh, are you okay? Right? You really want to pamper them. And they might be an earth sign or an air sign. They're like, I'm fine. And your needs aren't being met because they don't need you. But again, you don't want to be overly needy because this can be very detrimental to the relationship. And you want your needs to be, you want it to be reciprocated. You may not show that at first, but in the long run, you do. So there you go. Now, how do I predict when love is going to come into the life? When love is going to be enhanced in your life, and when you are going to fall out of love or finally cut the cord around love? Or how can we save that love relationship? How can we enhance it, make it better, and improve on it? Whether it's with a loved one, a friend, a partner, a colleague, or child, or even your parents. Then I take a look at when there's afflictions to the chart. So is Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, is it hitting a square in opposition to your Venus or your Mars? Then there's going to be a short period of time, anywhere from a year to 2 years, in which you're going to be working on the love. And it really isn't about working on the love between you and that other person. It's working on the love in here. It's very important to understand as well. Everyone is a mirror and a reflection of who we are. And then if we're looking at when am I going to find love? When is it going to happen? When are we going to get happier? When are things going to work out? Of course, there's still a backstory to how you can make that happen. You want to work, you want to co-create with this energy. But then I look for trines, what's called trines and sextiles with Venus and Mars, with the other planets as well. And usually like Saturn is like, we're going to settle down. Or if it's in the fourth or the 10th house, this is a settling down. This is a long-term relationship. Jupiter can be fleeting. It's fun, it's playful, but didn't really last that long. Uranus can be the same thing. And it always ends up, if it's a positive aspect, it ends up in friendship. It ends up with a mutual ending, if there is an ending. If there's not an ending, it means it happens really fast, super fast. Like we hook up really fast, we connect really fast, and we get married, or we settle down in each other's home, in a home very quickly. Neptune is more of a spiritual connection with that person. It's kind of a karmic bond, and Pluto as well. If this is in the in the 12th house, then if you've got Venus and Mars, this is my own interpretation in the 12th house, then most likely you have at least two karmic relationships that you have to connect with, whether it's positive or challenging. Challenging always ends up positive. In my astrology, everything ends up positive. Then that really depends on what's afflicting those two charts as well. We look at the ascendant, we look at the seventh house. There's so many other aspects that we can look at, but that's the basis of Mars and Venus. Namaste. Hi, everyone. It's Holly from AskHollyHall.com. Did you know that if you wanted to be in any of the sciences, such as math, medical, that you had to learn astrology as well? Up until the mid 1800s. If you look at the whole scheme of human existence, 150 years ago, 170 years ago, that's not very far away. You had to take astrology all the way up until then. Why? Because many of the experts back then would use astrology, the moon and the sun, the equinox, the full moon, the new moons, for predicting happier birth, to be able to procreate, to be able to plant seeds and grow. When do we harvest? They would also look at it to understand when there was inflammation and how to cure inflammation, when to be able to get married, find a partner, build a home, sow or till the land. I mean, there was a book that's very old. It's been around since 1792, and that's called The Farmer's Almanac. That's right. And there's everything in here, from when to sow seeds, all of the phases of the moon, and what to do with every single phase of the moon. And we used to do this naturally. Like right now, it's a little daunting, right? It's like, oh my gosh, Holly, I barely get through my day no long, figure out what the moon sign is in. There's good reason why if women live together or work together, their moon cycles start to line up. That's right. All of their moon cycles happen all at the same time. Woohoo, don't want to be a fly on that wall, do we? But that's what happens. Why? This energy is very powerful and strong, and the ancients knew this way back in 2 millennium BC, if not further. There's hieroglyphics and carvings on walls that show that they knew where all of the planets were and the constellations. I do sidereal astrology, which is close to Vedic astrology, but yet it's not. But that's the best way to explain it to the layman. I did Western for 30 years, and it's just not accurate. They even talking about it in the Farmer's Almanac. So there you go. I hope it goes back to those days. I believe it will. And they will rely on experts up until then to predict timings of what's best and what's not best for every single event in life, globally and personally. Why not? We need all the help we can get, right? Namaste. Oh, by the way, could you subscribe and like? If you really like my context, and I can see that a lot of people do, I got a lot of views, but not as many people are subscribing. Literally 43% of you are not subscribing. Get on board. Namaste.
Except getting it into the pipe or taking it on out. All right. I want to have people think. Bring it over the pipe, piping freezing. Yeah. It would need to be done anyway, if anybody was staying here in the winter, so I'm just glad I'm doing it now. That's all. All right. This may not work. That's probably my MacGyver job.
What happened? Canada and the United States will join forces. Money will change all across the board. The system that is being used. We have got new moons, full moons, Mercury retrograde. We have one Venus retrograde and the ending of a Mars retrograde. And this means that we're going to start to begin to see peace, but it doesn't come without a price. Yes, you're listening to Holly from AskHollyHall.com. I am your modern yet ancient astrologer that is also a life coach with all kinds of modalities, including psychology, neurolinguistic programming, etc. And we are going to talk about the predictions for 2025. Hang on to your boots. So let's start off with what's happening in January. Now we have our full moon starting in January, and that will be in the 13th, and our new moon will be on the 29th. They typically last about 2.5 days. But what I like right away is that Mars is in retrograde, and Mars is going to be trining Uranus. And that's from January 20th to January 30th. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to tell you what it means for Canada and what it means for the United States. And I'm also going to tell you what it means personally as well, because you guys are from everywhere around the world, right? I just don't have the time, nor do you probably want to spend the time listening to me talk about every single country. But what it means is that there is going to be an ending, sort of a ceasefire on what I'm predicting to be three separate wars. We know what's going on with Ukraine. We know what's going on with Gaza, but there's a third one as well that people aren't familiar with. And this is going to create freedom amongst these countries. And that's going to be between January 20th and January 30th. Now, remember, I'm your Canadian astrologer, and I really do not follow politics in detail. I do have my favorite things that I'm interested in seeing fixed in the world, but I think that's more of an ethical humanitarian construct. So what I'm seeing is because Uranus is going through, it's actually going to be leaving the sixth house in the United States chart and in the Canadian chart. And you know what? This is up for debate too. So if you guys have any comments around this, I'm really somewhat ashamed that we use uh, when the British Empire took over Canada and when the United States signed their constitution bill, Canada isn't a Canada's country, and the United States was born millions of years before that. So I have a hard time having to pick a birth chart for Canada and the United States because I feel like we're not honoring the original inhabitants of Canada and the United States. So I just want to put that out as a disclaimer. But these are what we use when we're looking at astrology. The there is what I'm seeing is because this affects the workforce when Uranus is leaving the sixth house, which is the house of employees and also in the workforce and somewhat the healthcare system, but this is more has to do with nutrition and naturopathic uh, food, the food industry around healthcare. So we're going to see a sudden change in two areas of the workforce in Canada and in the United States. This has been ramping up for a while in the United States because Uranus is about to leave the sixth house. And with the Canadian chart, Uranus is just entered into it. So we're a little bit behind. And basically what I'm seeing this means is that there's going to be sudden changes in the workforce all across the board. So many of the large corporations in the food industry are going to, the law is going to be laid down and it's going to shut a lot of them down. And they're going to shut down because they won't be able to afford to continue with the changes, or they have to shut down, claim bankruptcy, and start back up again under the new rules. This is going to be a bit detrimental for the workforce because there's going to be a ton of people out of work all of a sudden. This is where I see that there might be a bit of a recession. I'm also seeing in Canada, they're going to follow suit as well. Now, when Uranus has to do with leaving and fleeing in other countries and changes as well. In a personal chart, if I saw Uranus in the sixth house, I would be telling somebody that they may be going to another country to seek work. And that's what I see happening is there may also be a law or a regulation, and this is handed down in the United States by the government to leave the country. There's going to be a lot of deportation. I see this happening with Canada as well, except for it's for different reasons, but it still affects the workforce dramatically. So the good news is you're going to feel like all of a sudden uh, jobs, especially in the United States and Canada, that's not going to be affected. The changes in the food industry, not quite yet. It's not going to affect the workforce. However, all of a sudden there's jobs opened up. Other jobs are opened up. So people will be losing jobs in one place, but there will be options for jobs in a sector that's growing because suddenly there's a bunch of people who've left the country for whatever reason. And so there's jobs opening up. That's what I'm seeing. It is a trine. So this is favorable. As much as it's gonna be such chaos immediately, such an immediate turning point for both countries. And this does affect other countries wherever the people are fleeing or leaving or being told to leave too. I don't quite know. Uranus is unpredictable. So we really don't always know exactly what it's going to do. All I can say is it's affecting the sixth house in both charts. Now we move into March, and you're gonna be like, what's going on? We've got Mars in retrograde up until January 30th, so we're okay with that. February, there isn't really a lot of action happening, except that Mars is still in retrograde from January all the way until mid-February. So I believe that's going to be the cleanup of what happens in January. There's going to be a lot of recalibration, rearranging. They're prepared for this, and Canada's prepared for this as well. I believe that a lot of people are going to start questioning what's going on with Canada. Why are they such an alignment with the United States? Is Canada going to be the 51st or the 52nd state? They say the 51st and the 52nd state. I've always said that Alberta was going to move there. I've said that for a while because of the resources. I do believe there's going to be an easing into this. I believe there's going to be massive amount of handshakes between Canada and the United States where they can join forces and resources as well. We'll be able to move back and forth at par. The dollar will slowly change, but not quite yet. I actually don't see the dollar making a complete change until November across the globe. But I believe that Canada and the United States, when they join forces, is going to be the leading part of that. In March 30th to the 31st, moving into April, we see there's so many great wows happening, you guys. You got to hang in there. We see Saturn trining Uranus. And this means that there's going to be a divide at that time. So there's going to be structure and rules and laws and obligations. And in the United States, that's going to be still around corporations and the workforce, huge corporations. There's only about five, I think, with the food industry. Those are the ones that are going to be, they're going to be labeled and indoctrinated with very serious changes that have to be made. For instance, let's say red dye. They're going to be no more red dye, no more. And you know where red dye comes from? It comes from this parasitic beetle that they crush and it goes like blood red, and that's our dye. It's like so gross. But it comes in all different forms. And many people are allergic to it, have severe allergic reactions to it on different levels. I believe that's one of the ones that are going to come down. The other one is the barbus. I want to say barbicide. I don't know, but it's an ingredient that gives a longer shelf life for a flour. That's also going to be taken away and become illegal. And you have no idea how many foods are using these products in the making of so many different foods. So all these foods are going to be ripped off the shelf. Now, this is going to be very detrimental as well to the grocery industry. Just think about it. They're going to have all of this food that's just going to be garbage. Where is it going to go? Well, yeah, we can give it to the poor people. Why not? Who knows what's going to happen with that, right? People might protest against that too. It's poison for us, but it's not poison for them. Uh, it's such a sudden, unexpected change, and that's what we're going to see the implementation of it between April 5th and the 22nd. And this is where the divide goes. There's actually going to be almost like an underground. When we had prohibition and there were underground speakeasies for you to find alcohol that was supposed to be so bad for us, and it's bad for us. I still like my wine, but it's bad. And we'll be able to have these underground smuggling Skittles, Mars bars, and Wonder Bread, Fruit Loops. I know, crazy. That's what it's going to be. And then in mid-March, we've got Mercury goes into retrograde, and that goes from mid-March the 15th to April the 7th. Well, Mercury is in retrograde. We're going to start taking a look. That's when AI is going to take over a couple of the industries that are going to be quite serious. And I see that with the car industry. Okay. And it changes the trajectory of not only the car industry, but also with the phone, the computer, and the internet. And that's the one I want to focus on more because I don't think everyone's still going to hang on to their older cars. So I don't see the AI coming out in the car industry is going to make a massive difference immediately. But the internet and the computer and the phone, it's going to turn on its head. There will be a specific phone, a specific computer, and a specific internet that will all be tied together. And if you so choose to purchase this, it's almost like when Apple came out, became the competition for Windows. And this will be a competition and it'll cost a tiny bit more money at first, but the investment is that it'll be uncensored. Everything will be uncensored. There'll be no infiltration of larger companies that want to build up algorithms and collect emails and watch your data and watch your browsing history in order to gain uh, enough knowledge about the general public that they can manipulate us into spending more money. So that will not be able to happen with this new product. Yes, it's going to cost a little bit more. Yes, there'll still be advertising and there'll still be news and there'll still be, all types of other things that we're used to right now. It will just be honest and no manipulation. And you choose. I don't believe everybody's going to be on board with it at first. They'll be a little bit nervous, rather the devil I know than the devil I don't know. But if you think about it, how long has computers and cell phones been around? Not that long. So who cares if we change it up a bit? And so these stores will be popping up all over the place, and there'll be people calling you saying, "Hey, do you want to buy this computer slash phone slash internet system that is completely separate from the grid, from the matrix in which we are right now?" And some of you may be very, very afraid of it, that, oh, this is just another ploy to manipulate us. But I don't see it as that way at all. The technology is groundbreaking. I don't even know what it is right now because it's the planet Uranus as well. And then we go into Venus goes into retrograde. So what I'm saying with with Mercury being in retrograde up until April 7th is the people not accepting it. So they're really going to approach the average person because they're not going to expect that, major banks, major corporations, Wall Street is going to climb on board with this technology because it really means a complete overhaul of probably multi-million billion dollar systems that are already in place for the last 30 years in large organizations. But the average bear, the average person is going to start. And that will bring on, just like when the computers came out and the internet came, and then all of a sudden, nobody thought they needed a website. Now everybody's got 10 websites. And the smart people were buying up all of what they thought in the future would be a domain name that would be popular. And they made tons of money from doing that. So that's what's going to happen. All these new ingenious businesses are going to form from this new technology that would be coming out. is there going to be a battle against it? Absolutely. And we're going to see that throughout the entire year. But wow, wow, wow. That's going to be very strong between June 11th and the 18th. There's going to be a retaliation. In fact, so much so that I believe that starting in June, between the 11th and the 18th, is the corruption of trying to bring down two major political entities, and one is American, one is Canadian, and then one is in the Europe, which is I'm seeing it to be Russia as well. It is not so favorable for everyone because we're not going to know who to trust. That's what it's going to come down to. Between June 11th and the 18th, there's just going to be this war. We think that, the American Trump is shaking hands with all of these other countries, and then he kind of throws in a monkey wrench into it. And they're like, wait, we didn't sign up for that. And that's what I see happening. So it is going to be putting a big mistrust against the American politics. And that's going to have the whole world up in arms. Now, who do we trust? We thought you were making friends, and now you're making enemies. But just before that, which is June, the 3rd and the 5th, this is a very small window of time. That's where I see the beginning of the shift and the change around money and finances. And that may be where I see more of a shaking hands between the United States and Canada, and them negotiating, what are we going to do with healthcare system? What are we going to do with our tax system? What are we going to do with the dollar? Because a lot of you Americans may not know, but our dollar, it sucks. Literally, it's like we get 75 cents. If you guys come and spend $1 here, it's worth $1.30. So yeah, we go spend $1 there, it cost us $1.30. So um that's where we're going to see. And then retrograde, which Saturn connects, and this is the big one. There's a big one where there's a huge connection, about 3 or 4 to 5 planets in July. And then there's another one, oh my gosh, right at the very end of this year. And that's where I see the huge money change. So we'll talk about that in a second. In July, there's something about institutions and religion. And this is with Neptune in the United States. This has to do, yeah, this has to do with the educational system and religion and spiritual. Okay. Not necessarily like woo woo spiritual, but just spiritualism in the education system. That's where we're going to start seeing a change. And then, slowly it's going to move into diet and health for the United States. That's where there's a sudden shift and change in that. And that's going to happen as soon as Uranus crosses over, which we're looking at April till June in the school system. And then in Canada, Neptune's in the second house. So there's a real struggle around what are we going to do with our financial stability. And again, that has to do with the shaking of the hands with our neighbors, the United States, and people really up in arms around that and quite upset. And to me, it logically won't make sense because it means that we'll be at par. Do you remember there was a time when our money was at par? It was the same. I remember that. And so it's gonna go back to that. But so many people have made foreign investments. And again, I'm probably using the wrong lingo because these are downloads that I receive. And sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't understand that. But somehow foreign investments, maybe they bought the American dollar, hoping it was gonna, make the money, or it was making the money. But anyways, it crashes a lot of people's investments that were based outside of Canada. So that's where Canada is going to be kind of in a conundrum around it. What are we going to do? This isn't fair. However, we're going to get through it because come the, oh, and I do want to talk about, uh, you know what? I'm just going to do the full moons and new moons after because this is getting to be a little bit heavy here. In In July and August, we've got Mercury goes into retrograde again. And I'm seeing from there's going to be a lead up in the news in July and August, a slandering around, again, three important political figures that are uh, going to be charged with criminal activity. One of them is in Canada. I'm not going to say who because then I'll be considered biased, and I'm not. One of them is in the United States. Two are actually in the United States, but one of them doesn't live in the United States anymore. So those are going to bring, but it's connected to entities in the United States still. And I do believe one of them is going to be Trump. I'm going to say that much. And regardless, this is going to be the forefront. And then the lead in into all of November. Okay. All of November is when it's going to be very quick and quite fast, believe it or not. It's not going to be long winded. And I actually think a couple of them are going to be thrown out of court immediately. And one of them will lead to an arrest or being taken out of the system that they're in. I know I'm being cryptic, but I feel like I have to be careful with what I say. Sometimes I try to pretend that I know what this is pertaining to the event. I can say it's criminal court. I can say that this is where it's all going to be announced and in general. But if I try to say exactly who it is and what the crime was, that can that detail can throw everything off. And then people don't actually see the big picture of it, if that makes sense. And in November and is where I see the change globally around money. It's almost like they're trying, how they did it with the euro? That's the download I'm getting, where they made it, every country in the United States and in Europe. Oh my God. Every country in Europe had uh, their own monetary system. And then they created the one monetary system, which is the euro. And that took a while. That took a while to gain traction and implement and the changes. And I don't even live in Europe. I can't imagine. But now that's like old news, right? That's kind of what it's going to be across the world, across the world. It won't, it'll be a smaller amount. I know you guys are going to say BRICS and it's a BRICS system. There's a whole bunch of other countries added to it, including Hungary. And they're just going to make that announcement and actually make the changes at that time, which will be very beneficial for all of the countries involved. And there will be people upset that have foreign investments in the opposite countries. And I think people are going to be upset about it because they don't want, because it's going to eliminate cash. And many people are going to be unhappy with the elimination of cash. And to be honest with astrologically, this is saying that it's a good thing. It really is. It's saying that it's like the dream team of how money is going to be utilized throughout the states. But logically, I'm thinking, does it really? I mean, cash is king, gold is gold. But cash and gold separated in the 60s, I believe, in the 50s and the 60s. Cash was no longer associated with a gold brick. So does it really matter? I'll leave that one up to you. Okay. Now we are going to look at the new moons and the full moons. Full moons, everyone has their own take on what we should do with a full moon and a new moon. Mine is when we have a full moon, this is when you want to have closure, when you want to wrap things up. Might be a small project, might be communication that you're having with a friend, might be a job, and maybe your own personal achievements. But you want to wrap things up during a full moon and you want to sit alone in privacy and decide how you're going to do this for yourself. A lot of inner work goes on in a full moon. It's also a time where if you haven't wrapped things up, you didn't say that, didn't finish speaking your truth at work, it's going to blow up. This is when it's going to happen. during that time. And then new moons are new beginnings. It's when you want to make sure that you start new projects. And we're going to take a look at what the Farmer's Almanac says about what we should do in a new moon and what we should do in a full moon. There's so much information in this book. I've never gone through this totally, you know? I should. Let me talk about, let's talk about Mercury in retrograde. What does it mean according to the Almanac? Mercury retrograde, sometimes the other planets appear to be traveling backwards through the zodiac. And this is an illusion, but we call this the illusion is retrograde motion. Mercury retrograde periods can cause our plans to go awry. However, intuition is high during this period, and coincidences can be extraordinary. When Mercury is retrograde, stay flexible, allow more time for travel, don't sign contracts, review projects and plans, but wait until Mercury is direct again to make final decisions. Or even wait till it's out of its shadow side, which means it goes back to its original position before it went retrograde. Mercury will be in retrograde uh, several times throughout the year, which I mentioned throughout this. So according to the Farmer's Almanac, full moon is there's timing and significance for full moons. The full moon is considered a time of culmination, energy, and illumination. It's when the moon is at its brightest. It symbolizes clarity, manifestation, and heightened emotions. You want to gardening and farming is quite traditional during full moons. It's a marker for harvesting crops. It's also associated with activities that require strong growth. A lot of people say if you cut your hair on a full moon, your hair is going to grow faster. Spiritual practices on a full moon are seen as ideal for spiritual full moons Spiritual practices during a full moon are seen as ideal reflections of accomplishments, releasing negativity, setting intention for the next cycle. Many people perform rituals to harness the full moon's energy. What I tend to do is I will put a crystal in water and then I'll drink the water the next day when it sits out in the full moon. What about new moons? New moons represent beginning, renewal, introspection. It starts off the lunar cycle with the moon. It is dark and unseen in the sky, symbolizing a blank slate. And there's a lot of practices also for gardening and farming in the Farmer's Almanac. And the spiritual practices is the new moon is perfect for setting intention, starting new projects, planning for the month ahead. Rituals often indicate journaling, meditating, and visualizing goals. It's also a great time for planting carrots and potatoes and planning and preparing your soil for future planting. Moon phases and weather. The almanac often links moon phases to weather patterns, suggesting that certain phases bring increased rainfall or temperature changes. And the zodiac influence, the almanac also incorporates astrological interpretations, noting which zodiac sign the moon occupies during each phase and which can influence the energy and the impact. And if you subscribe and you sign up to my channel on YouTube, you will see me talk about this throughout the months ahead for 2025. Now, let's take a look at the full moon for January is the 13th. The new moon is the 29th. The full moon for February is the 12th. New moon 27th. March, full moon 13th. New moon 29th. April, the full moon is the 12th and the new moon is the 27th. The full moon in May is the 12th and the new moon is the 25th. The full moon in June is the 11th and the new moon is the 25th. The full moon in July is the 10th and in July the new moon is the 24th. In August, the full moon is the 9th and the new moon is the 22nd. The full moon is September 7th. The new moon is September 21st. The full moon is October 6th, and the new moon is the 21st. November 5th is the full moon, and November 19th is a new moon. And December 4th is a full moon, and the new moon is December 19th. There you go. I will put a screenshot of this in my community section on YouTube, as well as on TikTok. There's your wrap for 2025. If you stuck through this, that's amazing. If you've just listened to a clip, get back over to my YouTube channel and watch the whole full Monty. Namaste. Oh, and if you want a reading, what's going on for 2025? Ask HollyHall.com. If you'd like a reading to find out what 2025 has in store for you and everyone that you love, then head over to askhollyhall.com and get a reading. Namaste.